Shut my friendly eye and welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin Anwin for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in Planet Zoo. And I'm continuing in the Wetlands Conservation Zoo today with a restaurant, and restaurants are really good for enticing guests away from their entrance and towards other parts of your zoo. And I wanted to have a mix of the conservation theme and the wetlands theme. So for this, I put it over the water, so it's kind of like a floating restaurant, but it's going to be definitely eco-themed because the inspiration for this building is actually from The Sims Mobile. I actually do enjoy playing Sims Mobile in my free time. It's quite a relaxing game. And there's a building in The Sims Mobile called the Eco Workshop. The Eco Workshop's a really interesting building, so I'm giving it a go anyway. I knew I wanted the curve to be 4 meters high, so I got a 4 meter square floor that will actually get the exact size I wanted for my circle. So I used the grass panel pieces and put those two pieces parallel to one another to start my circle. I wish we had a smaller panel, but it's fine because I still managed to make a nice circle out of it. And then I just deleted the half of the circle that I didn't want and created this curved shape. Obviously, this building's not going to be an eco workshop, so like anything inside is not going to be the same as the outside, but the building shape, the roof and the windows was like my main inspiration. But I wanted to play around with a lot of the new conservation pack items that I haven't played around with yet. So I'm using the 3D printed concrete walls. I don't know. The textured walls are really nice just to cover the plasterboard of the restaurant, and I used the panels instead of the wall pieces so I could make the building even smaller because the wall pieces obviously lay just off the restaurant building, and the panels I could merge more into the walls and have them lay really close to the restaurant walls. And I really love building with panels because I can play around with the shapes a lot more. Panels like my favorite thing. The walls are too restrictive most of the time because you can only rotate them 45 degrees once they're in the group. And I know I mentioned this last week, but the UK has been experiencing some heat waves recently, and next week for me, but this week for you, the temperatures are supposed to go up past 30 degrees. It's like 31, 32 in Wales, and it's going to be literal hell. It is really difficult to keep places cool in the UK because we don't have air conditioning, we just have fans. So if the weather does end up being high 20s to low 30s, I'll put the Fahrenheit up for you Fahrenheit people because the UK is all in Celsius. But if it does end up being really, really hot next week for me, this week for you, I'm not going to be doing a video for you next week because it is absolutely impossible to keep this room cool. I covered the gaps between the grass paneling and the wood underneath the grass and coloured the wood pieces a shade of green that kind of matched the grass to kind of hide the wood pieces so the grass looked more blended. And putting the glass paneling in now, I wanted this to be a big window, and I couldn't help but think of how that would be an absolute greenhouse in the hot weather. But I played around with a couple of different glass panels because the big ones were really good because they're quite plain, and I wanted to create my own window pattern, but they didn't do really small panels, so I went in with the one-way glass for the smaller panels because they have a 0.5 by 1 panel, which is just perfect. And I recolored the wood panels underneath the grass roof black to match in with the window panes that I'm going to be putting in. And I think it makes it look more modern as well. It then matches in with the grass roof that I put on the potting shed for the conservation entrance as well. And for the seating for the restaurant, I wanted it all outside. There's not really any room inside the building for seating anyway. And there was actually seats outside of the eco workshop on the Sims mobile as well. And I tend to use these tables a lot more than the booth tables. I've only ever really used the booth tables for the 1950s themed diner. I don't know, it's been a little while since we've had restaurants added into the game. It would be nice to have some more restaurant tables added in. Maybe some smaller ones, like 4 seats instead of, is it 6? But like maybe some smaller tables. And for the walls inside the building, the textured 3D printed thingies, I went with orange to go with the color theme of the whole zoo, the atomic orange. And I wanted to use these new paneling pieces to cover the backs of the counter spaces on the restaurant building. I wanted to keep it open so you could still see inside with all of the huge glass windows, but still have it kind of closed off so it didn't look like the guests could just walk into the restaurant kitchen area. But the heat wave hasn't been too bad. I know I'm being a typical British person complaining about the heat and about the temperature and the weather, but it hasn't been too bad. I made some pizza dough and I had fresh pizza. It's always good proving bread doughs in this weather because the yeast actually does like rise really well. Normally if I do pizza and breads in the winter, the dough takes ages to prove because it's just so cold. But what about you? Do you like baking? Kind of assume people like playing games if they watch gameplay like this. Do you play Planet Zoo or do you just watch Planet Zoo? The windows on the Eco Workshop have this really fun fractured kind of triangular pattern. I thought it would be fun to try and create some triangles with the different triangular pieces and then make my own triangular pattern. So it's inspired by the Eco Workshop, but I haven't necessarily copied the pattern. I made my own up. And I'm actually using the blinds, it's wood, instead of the panel pieces which were slightly rectangular. The ones for the blinds were square, so they were a bit thinner and equal on both sides, so it was better to create the shapes. But I started off with some triangles around on the space where I thought would look nice, and then I'm following the shapes of the triangles that I placed down first. Lucky you can see this, but I was just playing around with each of the different angles to then place more triangles along the edges of some of the other already put in triangles with the panels. Sometimes my first placement won't necessarily work tidy. It'll look a little odd, so I'll delete one and I'll place another one down, but I thought having these triangles there as a reference would help create even triangles to start with. You can still see the silver lining, like the edging of the glass, but having all of these dark fractured panels, like pattern with the panels, really helps with hiding the connections of the different glass panels. It wasn't exactly a regular shaped building, so you can't really help having the panels kind of connecting to each other in that way because I have a round edge at the end of my building. But I just tried to have lots of different types of triangles, and I just tried to make sure that each of the different shapes had a different direction as well. I didn't want them all pointing upwards or pointing left or right. So I tried to have the triangles facing different ways as well to have more of a variation. And the front was really fun because I wanted the same shapes and patterns, but the shapes and the triangles obviously didn't fit perfectly on this front piece, and I needed to make sure that it still had the cutout of the doorway to allow the guests to come in and order their food. So it was fun moving the paneling around to make sure that I wasn't cutting anything off or having anything stick out. So I kept the triangular shapes and pieces, but I made some of the lines or some of the panels shorter or longer to fit in with that area. It's my favourite part, this front part. It's just a shame with the angle that I placed the building that the sun doesn't directly shine on that entrance part. I had an idea for the like floating part of this, and I was trying to make it like conservation themed too. I watched this like building off the grid series, and this one episode where they built this like floating house using old carrier bags and old plastics like bottles, where they put all of the plastics together in a bag or in like a net and created like a flotation device with these old plastic items that they collected from the beach. And I thought that was a really cool idea, that they created this like raft to live on using waste. So I grabbed the water barrels. I thought they would be really cool, like recycled plastic containers where you could sort of imagine that maybe carrier bags, plastic bottles, plastic waste were kept in these barrels to create buoyancy. And I've put base game ropes along the edges of them so it looks like it's actually helping the building float. And for the tables, I was playing around with the colours a little bit. I wanted the colours of the tables to obviously match in with the restaurant, but I didn't want it to be too colourful at the same time. I wanted it to still feel quite modern. And I also wanted to add in some parasols, like some sunshade umbrellas for the tables as well. And I went with the New World umbrellas because they were quite modern looking and they weren't too big. I was thinking about doing the conservation pack umbrella, but it was just way too big for the space. I actually decided to use the wood tone that I used for the like kitchen area, that paneling. So the green colour in this whole build is just going to be for the grass roof. I always want to say glass, not grass, but luckily my accent sounds pretty much the same anyway, doesn't it? To add some light around the area, I added in the solar lights from the conservation pack, and I'm actually disappointed in these. They're called solar lights, right? So when you see solar light, you assume it doesn't need any external power because they're solar lights. Solar lights in a garden charge through the sun, and at night then they light up. They don't require any other power. So I assumed the solar lights in Planet Zoo wouldn't require any extra power, but they do. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed in that because you could power those lights with the wind turbines, the solar panels, or just the transformer. I never use transformers in my zoos, but you could power these with the transformer, so they're definitely not solar lights then. I put a wind turbine over on another part of the zoo to power these lights, so they're not solar lights anymore, they're wind lights. I don't know, I was kind of disappointed in that. And lastly, I wanted to add some lights inside the restaurant building as well. The easiest way to do like hanging lights like these is to build them using advanced move and advanced duplicate, which is advanced move is X and advanced duplicate is control X. So if you start with the ceiling fixture, like the top part, and then you duplicate that ceiling fixture and select the light then will be in line with the ceiling fixture. And then if you duplicate the light and select one of the lampshades. The lampshade then will be in line with the light and the ceiling fixture, so everything is nicely in line with each other, and it's the quickest and easiest way to create a lampshade like that. That is pretty much it. Onto the pretties now. I had a lot of fun playing around with the shape of this building and creating the fun fractal pattern of the windows. It's quite small as well, so it'll fit quite nicely in different areas of your zoo. You can even put it over the water because I've added those flotation devices underneath, but they are a separate group to the rest of the building, so if you wanted to just put it on the ground, you can delete the water barrels, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on top of the water like I put it. But it's a fun restaurant that kind of ties in the wetlands theme and the conservation theme together, inspired by a building in The Sims Mobile. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also let me know what animal I should build a habitat for next. It might not be next week though, but obviously I am always up for suggestions. Any animals from the wetlands or the conservation pack that I haven't done already, and you can check whether I've done a habitat for them already in the Wetlands Conservation Park playlist that I have for all of the speed builds for this zoo. I'm going to leave it off there. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you would like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload speed builds on Wednesdays and shorts tutorials on Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!